What if the most powerful force in the world is not a government, not an army, and not a religion, but an equation? What if the rules that determine who gets rich, who gets elected, and who gets to set the terms for everyone else are not written in constitutions, but in mathematics that almost nobody learns in school?
Every few years, the world gets a scandal. The Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, the Paradise Papers. And for a moment, people are outraged. Then the news cycle moves on. But here is what rarely gets explained. Those scandals are not bugs in the system. They are features. They are the system working exactly as its mathematics intended.
To understand how global power actually distributes itself, you have to start with a 19th century Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto. In 1896, Pareto was studying land ownership in Italy. He noticed something strange. 80% of the land was owned by just 20% of the population. He checked other countries. Same pattern. He looked at his pea garden. Same ratio. What Pareto had stumbled onto was not a coincidence. It was a mathematical law. That law is called a power law distribution. In simple terms, it means that in any complex system where resources can accumulate, money, influence, followers, political connections, a small minority will always end up controlling a disproportionate majority. It is not about greed. It is not about conspiracy. It is about mathematics. The system self-organizes toward concentration every single time. Now, apply that law to actual 2026 data. According to the World Inequality Report, published by the World Inequality Lab in Paris, the top 10% of global income earners now make more than the other 90% combined. Let that sink in. 1 in every 10 people earns more than the 9 standing next to them put together. And that is just income. When you look at wealth, the accumulated assets people actually own, the concentration is even more extreme. The richest 1% of humanity now owns 43.8% of everything on Earth. Stocks, land, companies, buildings, intellectual property. Nearly half the planet's productive resources belong to 1/100th of its people. At the very bottom, the math inverts completely. The poorest half of humanity, roughly 4 billion people, collectively holds just 0.52% of global wealth. To put that in human terms, fewer than 60,000 individuals on this planet control 3 times more wealth than those 4 billion people combined. 60,000 versus 4 billion. The math of that sentence should disturb you. In 2025, billionaire wealth globally reached $18.3 trillion, the highest level in recorded history. That number grew by more than 16% in a single year, 3 times faster than the previous 5-year average. Since 2020, billionaire wealth has increased by 81%. Meanwhile, 1 in 4 people worldwide does not regularly have enough to eat. The number of billionaires crossed 3,000 for the first time in human history last year. And the richest among them, Elon Musk, became the first individual in history to cross $500 billion in personal wealth. For context, $500 billion is more than the entire national GDP of countries like Sweden, Argentina, or South Africa. But the math of the billionaire class is not just about money. It is about what money converts into. Oxfam's 2026 research found something that sounds like it belongs in a dystopian novel, but is backed by hard data. Billionaires are 4,000 times more likely to hold political office than ordinary citizens. Wealth and political power do not merely correlate. They mathematically compound each other. To understand why power concentrates so reliably, you need to understand a second mathematical principle, one that physicists discovered by studying the internet. In 1999, a physicist named Albert Laszlo Barabasi analyzed how the World Wide Web grew. He found that new websites did not connect randomly. They connected preferentially to whichever sites already had the most links. The rich got richer. The popular got more popular. He called this preferential attachment. What Barabasi discovered was that almost every complex network in the real world, the internet, airline routes, corporate supply chains, social media, even human friendships, organizes itself the same way. A small number of highly connected nodes, called hubs, end up controlling the flow of nearly everything. These are scale-free networks, and the global power structure is one. In the global economic network, the hubs are not countries, they are firms. 3 asset management companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, together manage more than $25 trillion in assets as of mid-2025. To calibrate that number, $25 trillion is larger than the entire economy of the United States. These 3 firms are simultaneously the largest shareholders in most of the world's biggest corporations. Here is where the mathematics becomes genuinely unsettling. BlackRock and Vanguard alone are simultaneously among the 3 largest institutional shareholders of every single company in the S&P 500. All 505 of them. Every bank, every oil company, every pharmaceutical company, every media conglomerate, every tech giant. The same 2 firms sit at the top of all of them. That is not coincidence. That is network mathematics producing a hub. This matters because whoever owns the major shareholders of competing companies can influence the strategy of those companies without anyone openly colluding. Harvard Business School researchers have shown that when the same institutional investors own large stakes in competing airlines, for instance, ticket prices tend to rise. Not because of a phone call, because of the mathematics of shared ownership aligning incentives invisibly. Now, the third mathematical principle behind power concentration, the feedback loop. In system science, a feedback loop is when the output of a system becomes an input that amplifies the original condition. In plain language, more money buys more political influence. More political influence produces policies that generate more money, which buys more influence, which produces more policy. The loop accelerates until something breaks, or until someone steps outside it. The revolving door between Washington and Wall Street is perhaps the most visible expression of this feedback loop in real life. In 2025 alone, 866 people moved from the United States Congress to K Street lobbying firms, a record number, exceeding even the previous all-time high of 777 set in 2007. That is not 866 individuals looking for better salaries. That is 866 live connections being installed between private capital and public power. It works in both directions. The Campaign Legal Center identified at least 47 former corporate lobbyists who were nominated or actively serving as senior political appointees in the United States government as of April 2026. These are not outsiders influencing government. These are the same individuals moving back and forth through the same door, wearing different name badges each time. This is what political scientists call regulatory capture, when the agencies created to regulate an industry end up controlled by the very people the industry sent to regulate them. It is not corruption in the traditional sense. It is the mathematical result of allowing the same human network to occupy both positions. When the same nodes sit in both the government hub and the corporate hub, the distinction between the 2 networks collapses. Now, let us talk about the mathematics of money itself. Specifically, how compound interest is the hidden engine of wealth divergence. If you invest $1,000 at a 7% annual return, You have $2,000 in 10 years, $4,000 in 20, $8,000 in 30. The math doubles your money roughly every decade. But here is the critical detail. Wealthy individuals and institutions do not earn 7%. They earn 10, 12, sometimes 20% through access to private equity, hedge funds, and asset classes that require minimum investments most people will never reach. Thomas Piketty, the French economist whose 2014 book Capital in the 21st Century triggered a global debate, demonstrated this with historical data across 2 centuries. Whenever the rate of return on capital, what money earns, exceeds the rate of economic growth, what everyone earns, inequality widens automatically. No policy needed, no conspiracy required, just math. He called this R is greater than G. And in 2026, R is still greater than G. Now factor in offshore wealth, the third major mathematical lever of power concentration. According to estimates compiled by the Tax Justice Network and confirmed by an April 2026 Oxfam analysis, somewhere between $21 and $32 trillion in private wealth is held in offshore secrecy jurisdictions worldwide. That is wealth that is invisible to tax authorities, invisible to democratic oversight, and invisible to the public.
And who hides it? The math here is even more concentrated than you might expect. The top 0.1%, not 1%, but 0.1%, hold roughly 80% of all untaxed offshore wealth. The untaxed fortunes of this tiny group amount to approximately $2.84 trillion. That number is roughly equivalent to the combined GDP of France and Canada. Hidden, untaxed, beyond democratic reach. And here is the twist that almost no one knows. The world's largest enabler of financial secrecy is not a Caribbean island. It is the United States of America. According to the Tax Justice Network's Financial Secrecy Index for 2025, the U.S. ranks number 1 globally, above Switzerland, above the Cayman Islands, above Singapore, as the jurisdiction most responsible for helping individuals hide wealth from other countries' tax authorities. The mechanism is simpler than you would think. The United States refuses to share financial account information about non-resident foreigners with their home country's tax authorities. States like South Dakota, Wyoming, and Nevada allow foreign nationals to set up anonymous trusts and shell companies that are virtually impossible to trace. The world's police of financial crime turns out to be one of its biggest enablers when the money is flowing in the right direction. Let us now talk about debt, the fourth mathematical instrument of power. The mathematics of debt is simple. Whoever controls what you owe controls your choices. This applies at every scale. A family with credit card debt at 20% interest will never escape it through normal wages. The math does not work. A developing nation with sovereign debt denominated in US dollars faces the same trap at a national scale. According to the World Bank and IMF data cited by Oxfam, approximately 60% of low-income countries are currently in or at high risk of debt distress. Many of these nations spend more servicing foreign debt than they spend on healthcare or education for their own citizens. The structure of global debt keeps poorer nations in a permanent state of financial dependency, not through force, but through the mathematics of interest compounding in foreign currencies. Here is where the concept of network hubs connects to debt. When a nation owes money to the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, those institutions can attach policy conditions, called structural adjustment programs, to any loan. Those conditions often require privatizing public services, reducing government spending, and opening domestic markets to foreign capital. The math of debt thus becomes a mechanism for reshaping entire national economies from the outside. Now, let us examine the media system, because in any power structure, controlling the story is as important as controlling the money. The mathematics of media ownership have followed the same power law as everything else. In the United States, 6 corporations, Comcast, Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, Paramount Global, News Corp, and Sony, control the overwhelming majority of what over 300 million Americans watch, read, and hear every single day. And who owns those 6 corporations? When you trace ownership up through institutional investors, you arrive at the same network hubs we identified earlier: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and a handful of sovereign wealth funds. The same entities that own the banks also own the companies that report on the banks. The same nodes that fund the political campaigns also own the channels that cover the elections. The network is not a conspiracy. It is a mathematical structure. The mathematics of information concentration have a specific danger that purely economic concentration does not. They shape what alternatives people can even imagine. When 6 companies own the channels, and those companies share investors with the industries those channels are supposed to scrutinize, the range of ideas that reach mass audiences narrows, not through censorship, but through what economists call the spectrum of acceptable discourse, moving toward the interests of those who fund the platforms. Here is another dimension of the math that is rarely discussed: the power of information asymmetry. In any transaction or negotiation, the party that knows more wins. This is a mathematical certainty, formalized in Nobel-winning economics by George Akerlof, Michael Spence, and Joseph Stiglitz. What the financial system has engineered over decades is a structural information gap between those who design complex financial instruments and those who are asked to trust them. This is why the 2008 financial crisis happened the way it did. The firms that designed mortgage-backed securities and credit default swaps understood their true risk. The pension funds, municipalities, and ordinary investors who bought them did not. The asymmetry of information, multiplied across trillions of dollars, produced a collapse that wiped out the savings of ordinary people, while those with inside knowledge exited their positions first. No one needed to break a law. The math was sufficient. The rise of artificial intelligence is now accelerating every dimension of this mathematical structure simultaneously. AI requires 3 things to function at its most powerful level: massive data, massive computing power, and massive capital. All 3 of those requirements favor existing hubs. The firms and governments that already sit at the center of the network are the ones best positioned to build and deploy the most powerful AI, which gives them faster intelligence, faster decision-making, and faster concentration of advantage. Oxfam's 2026 report put it in direct terms. The surge in AI-related corporate power has coincided with rollbacks in anti-monopoly enforcement, reductions in corporate tax cooperation internationally, and a political environment where the industry's funders shape the regulations governing that same industry. The feedback loop, wealth to power to policy to more wealth, is now running at algorithmic speed. Human institutions were not designed to regulate systems that move this fast.
Now pause and consider the full picture. Power law concentration of wealth, network hubs controlling corporate governance, feedback loops connecting money and politics, compound interest diverging at the top, offshore mathematics hiding $21 to $32 trillion from democratic accountability, revolving doors at record velocity, media ownership converging on the same institutional investors, AI amplifying every existing advantage. These are not separate problems. They are one mathematical system, operating at every scale simultaneously. History, however, is not without precedent for disrupting this kind of mathematical concentration. The United States, between 1930 and 1970, ran the highest top marginal tax rates in the developed world, reaching 91% in the 1950s.
Those decades also produced the largest middle class in American history. The construction of public universities, the interstate highway system, and the highest sustained economic growth rates the country has ever recorded. The math of redistribution, it turns out, can run in reverse. The breaking of concentrated power has happened before at global scale. The post-World War II order created international institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, precisely because policymakers of that era understood that unregulated concentration leads to the conditions that produce wars. The architecture they built was imperfect, but it was a deliberate attempt to redesign the network. The question for 2026 is whether the political will to repeat that kind of architecture still exists anywhere. There are mathematicians, economists, and systems scientists who argue that the tools to restructure the network already exist. A coordinated global minimum wealth tax, endorsed by 134 nations in a 2024 UN process, could begin to interrupt the offshore feedback loop. Antitrust law applied to asset management concentration could fracture the hub dominance of the big three. Algorithmic transparency requirements and beneficial ownership registries could reduce information asymmetry. The math of redistribution is not impossible. It just requires a more powerful political will than the math of concentration currently allows.
Here is what mathematics cannot tell you: whether humanity will choose to change the equations before they produce outcomes that make choice impossible. Power laws are not fate. Feedback loops can be interrupted. Networks can be redesigned. Compound interest can be redirected. The math behind global power structures is hidden not because it is too complex to understand, but because the people who benefit from it prefer that it stay hidden. Now you have seen it. The question is, what do you do with the equation?